Hello, everyone, and welcome to The Scene. I'm your host, Jeremy Houtsma. Today's guest is Joe Morin from the band Edison Glass. Joe and I go way back and have been friends for a long time. If you've never heard the band Edison Glass, you really have to. This episode is kind of special for me, and I'm going to admit, parts of it are just Joe and I catching up on life. Talk about a myriad of things, including Edison Glass, but we talk about getting older and what it's like to move on into different phases in your life. I really enjoyed the conversation, and I hope you guys do too. So with that said, welcome to The Scene. So where were you living before here?
I was south of town in like the Brentwood area, and I had this split level house that I was renting. The top level was all living space, and the bottom level I built a studio.
Oh, nice.
And so I had, studio things going on there, and sessions and writing and the whole nine. Teaching, producing, basically everything I do is all happening in that one place. Make my coffee in the morning and go straight down there and start on my day, which is just pretty much the dream.
Yeah.
But so as life would have it, circumstances can change. Like they just keep changing. Things just change.
If there's one constant in life, it's change, right?
Yeah.
So it's good to see you, man. It's been a really long time. I think the last time I saw you was when you guys were rolling through Seattle, which was years ago, like 10 plus years ago. And so
what is, I'm curious to know, that's forever ago in Seattle. I don't remember being in Seattle except a little bit.
You guys were playing with Nightmare View and Paper Rival, but I think they dropped off the tour.
Oh yeah. Wow, that's funny. I can't believe that. Yeah, and I remember specific things about that tour were really hilarious. We had this guy with us who was I don't remember playing the shows at all. Like whatsoever. I don't remember playing the drums. But I do remember like who we had on tour and like what we were up to, what it felt like, which is just so bizarre to me, because the things that like we were doing in Seattle, like we were there to play gigs, play shows and stuff, but there was, I have little recollection of that.
Right.
More nuanced, very nuanced memories of the surrounding events, which is just so strange to me. That's the last time we saw it. So what do you remember about that last week?
Let's see. We went to we all went to some burrito place. I think the place it's a pretty famous place in Seattle called Bimbo's Bitchin' Burritos or something like that. And I remember the show because I somewhere on YouTube there is a recap of that show that I put out on YouTube somewhere. I'll have to send it to you. But I remember.
What do you mean? Like you videoed?
Yeah.
You put like a vlog on YouTube?
Yeah.
That's cool. No, I'm laughing because of your face, like your facial expression. By the way, can we do like a 2-minute segment or something here on like the self-awareness, like the podcast voice, like all of a sudden like being self-aware. Oh, you're recording this and all that stuff,
right.
Like, oh, the camera's in the scene, so like we gotta like be conscious of the camera now, and like, I gotta put that voice on or put that anyway. I just think that's funny. I all of a sudden became very self-aware that like, okay, now I gotta,
Dude, I'm always.
Do you notice that at all?
No. To be honest with you, like I feel like things have been a lot of the conversations that I've had, like people have been incredibly genuine just in the interaction. like people have been willing to like it. Just all the to me, what is awesome about this is like this is like a therapy session for me, to be honest with you.
Mm.
Like because where I live, and even though I'm a therapist and like I am making connection all day long, but it's mostly I don't it's not like a mutual connection type of thing, right? Like it's I'm sitting there listening to people and providing feedback and all that other stuff. But this is like I get to talk with people that I either like really admire or who I've like had some sort of musical connection with, and just get to hear their stories and just kind of like connect on a one-on-one level. Like there's a part of me that wants to change the name of the podcast to like I'd have a beer with him or something like that, because at the end of it, I just feel like, dude, I would love to sit and talk more and have a beer with this person. I haven't had like an amazing amount of guests. I kind of patchwork where I can get them and things like that. And but yeah, I mean, yeah, I don't think I've never seen somebody all of a sudden just like turn it on, like I don't know. I'm trying to think if that happened. I think that seems to go on more when they start like recollecting like the past and past shows and things like that.
Mm-hmm.
So, and by the way, like if at the end of the episode or at the end of our time talking, if you're like, please cut that and whatever, just get in contact with me. I'm slow with getting these things out, man.
I've only ever, yeah, I've like actually Jordan used to host one, and I've actually so I was on that, and then I was on a different one, but no, I definitely start to get a self-consciousness, like a filter sort of thing, and I'm like hyper aware of everything I'm saying. I'm like, wait, not that I'm like, I want to take anything back, and that there's anything that I'd want to hide or something like that. In fact, Jordan and I were just talking before this, and I'm like, man, I actually love that what you just said about this being a like therapy session for you, because I'm really curious about like your walk in that journey and what that's been like for you and all that stuff, just on a personal note.
Yeah, I mean, I'm an open book about most things, so there's very little that I'm, it's like you were talking about becoming self-aware. It's like I'm painfully self-aware all the time. And like, that's both a gift and also a struggle in a lot of ways, and I think my wife would tell you the same thing. So it's great, but it also leaves itself open to being like, not to get too deep, but just being hurt by people, right? Because like you're willing to give and give, and people tend to be, I think, more reserved, and especially on the West Coast here. So
interesting,
different vibe. So it's I go to my own therapist, but this for me is more just like I get to sit here and talk, and I'm like, holy crap, I'm talking with Steve Lemos from American football, like, and having like a real conversation about life and kids and whatever else is going on in that realm. So
and you also offer therapy too, right?
Not to people on here, but no, man.
I'm hoping this could be some kind of publicly monitored. That's just what we need, right?
Joe, is something that's really interesting, and I don't know if this is going to be on the podcast or not, but it's like I have really good feelings towards the crew at ORU. I still talk with Ranzino. I occasionally talk with Bill Tokarski. Dave lives in the same town that I grew up with, in like a half a mile down from the house that I grew up in. which is super freaking weird.
James Ranzino?
Yes.
Oh, wow. Last I checked up on them, they were still in Brooklyn.
No, he moved to Midland Park, which is where I grew up. And it's
Crazy.
like in the same exact area. Their kids go to, he's like running into people I know. It's really
Crazy.
bizarre.
Yeah, that is
Really
bizarre.
super
Yeah,
bizarre.
it's so funny how that. I have lots of affection still for the whole crew, you know. And the last I saw Ranzino, I was on the road and I played a date in Manhattan. I was in Brooklyn, and so we hung out for a little bit. That was the last time I saw Chris McLeod as well, and yeah, and who else? You know, Liz and Morin, obviously. So I hung out with that whole crew for a moment, but yeah, I think the time before that, I saw, where did I see Dave? I saw Dave. I got together with Dave. This is a cool story here. Is Dave and Josh Polite.
Yeah.
We got together and went and saw Blindside on their reunion tour of Silence. I think it was, no, it wasn't a reunion. It was just like a show, you know?
Yeah.
And we used to tour Edison with Blindside. That was a really like pinnacle or monumental just sort of tour for us. I remember we were really happy to do that. So, you know, we got to know those guys a little bit, you know?
Yeah.
And so it was really cool seeing them, like, gosh, it must have been like 8 years later. And I forget the drummer's name, but, you know, I remembered his face, and I just walk up to him, and Dave's with me, and I just go, "What's up, man? It's good to see you. We toured with you. I toured with you like 8 years ago. Do you remember?" It's like, I don't know. It's like, yeah, Edison Glass. He goes, "Oh yeah, Edison Glass."
Oh yeah.
And that was the moment, you know.
Yeah.
And, you know, hugged him, said, you know, glad to see you again. And they went on and played, like, nothing changed. You know, they were just like the same exact, like, perfect Blindside, like, just ball and sound.
Well, I think they played, they played last year at Furnace Fest. That's where Dave and I met up at Furnace Fest together. And actually Seth was there.
That's rainwater.
Yeah. So I'm mostly like Dave and I just hung out a good amount. And for me, like the lineup that year, 21, was like phenomenal. I don't think it would get any better. But honestly, the best part of it, because Dave was like, "Oh, you should go this year." I was like, "I don't have anybody to go with." Like, so the best part of it for me was hanging out with Dave and just kind of catching up and reconnecting and, you know, having lunch together and just, you know, just the community and the connection and that. And the reason why I brought up having a lot of love for that group is that it's been sort of like my experience that some people would rather move on from that time in their life and almost like forget that ever happened.
Yeah. Isn't that interesting? I can recall a similar sentiment having happened not long after Edison Glass just kind of stopped playing together, and just because that era, it housed so many different experiences and specific times of life and specific relationships, whether they be romantic or whatever, and choices and just, you know, the whole gamut, you know, and lifestyle, the whole thing, you know, so there was a lot to remember, right? And then there's also a lot to forget. So.
Yeah. I'm always, so it's always this kind of like weird thing where like sometimes want to reconnect with some people and they're just kind of like, yeah, I think I just rather let that part of my life, like either explicitly or implicitly.
Yeah.
Not personally, just like there's a lot of pain in that, or there's a lot of like, I don't want to remember that time of my life. And it's interesting just because that's not how I experience things. I'm like, it's hard for me to forget things.
Hmm.
It's more constructive to like deconstruct and reconstruct some things through that, right? Like this is who I was then, and this is where I'm at now, and but I also understand some people not really wanting to, you know, kind of
I understand.
go back, right? Like,
Yeah, I think I understand what you mean. And the word, this is kind of a maybe a Christianese sort of word, but it's like the word redemption came to mind while you were
right,
talking. Because it's like we can look back on our pasts and we can, tell whatever story we really want to tell. Um, and we're constantly doing that. And there's this Christopher Nolan, you know, director of all these amazing movies. He deals with that subject all the time. It's like
mm,
constantly perceiving and narrating our own story. I think that's he he makes he does that in Inception, and he talks about that in Inception. It's like a wheel almost.
right,
It's like arrows pointing to each other in a circle. It's like there's the perceiving, and then there's and the narrating. I don't know if those are the exact concepts, but generally that's kind of what he was talking about, I think. And you know I suspect that's pretty true, and because I know it is. If we're just dealing with memories and dealing with you know how do I make sense of it all. And I think a redemption, and maybe even another Christianese word, which I'm very prone to using those right now in a redemptive way, hopefully,
mm-hmm.
is grace. The grace for the past. Grace for what has been. You know,
yeah.
um,
Well, I think
because I
that's
don't want to look back on the decisions that I used to make or the person who I used to be in a way that's betraying. I want to honor. I want to honor who I was and what I need, or who I had to become, if you
right.
want to put it that way, in order to kind of to be able to allow myself to take inventory today, right?
Right. I mean, all paths lead to who you are now, right? And either a huge part of therapy is just looking, I think, like at the past and making sense of it, right? Like I liked how you use that word, like who I had to become or who I had to be, because
Yeah.
a lot of stuff is like adaptive, right? A lot of it's survival,
Yeah.
and I can imagine that, like, as crazy as it may sound, that like you guys going on tour, and I remember you guys saying like just even watching you guys do some of the, or especially you do like the business stuff or like the booking and stuff, and it being so stressful, or just like what I mean, I'm actually like, how in God's green earth, like how did that become your thing for the band?
I know I've been always inclined to organization and communication, and um, you're probably familiar with the Enneagram, but I later
Yeah.
learned that I was or at least for a while there. It's a little hazy to me now what my go-to number is. And the numbers, by the way, speaking of who you had to become, numbers are not who you are, but who you had to become. So I think
Right.
in that season, who I had to become was a 1. So I just saw all the loose ends all the time, and I was very drawn to tie them up.
Yeah.
I think that's in short. I just gravitated towards it, and control. I mean,
Right.
I wanted some level of control of the situation, because I felt like if there was no control, which, let's be honest, all of just the whole thing can be so chaotic. In the shoes of a 20-year-old college dropout, who is, you know whose label are telling him and his friends that their band is going to be the next whoever,
Yeah.
You're going to be as big as Switchfoot or whatever the frig. And it's like, so now there's just so much chaos and uncertainty and ambition and hope and and creative, like just uh, just creativity, just as there's an onslaught of all of it, all happening at once, and so loneliness and all that stuff. So there's some level of control I think that we all reach for. For me, it was like, okay, what are the details that need taken care of?
Right.
Probably hyper analyzing it way too much, but
I don't think so. I think there's, like a lot of the things that you're kind of talking about are just, see, I work primarily with teenagers and young adults.
yeah,
right? Who are
that's what I was trying to ask you before.
Yeah, who are just kind of going through those kind of chaotic times, right? And like, I position myself, I don't have any answers. Like, my job is to kind of sift through things with the person and kind of like talk with them about, I don't know, who they were, or like who they're becoming, and then just like making like little observations like here and there type of thing. I mean, obviously it's a lot more than that, but it can be tiring as hell and chaotic and all that stuff too. But one of the things is that I talk about, I think, is a huge concept, is we all want the number one thing that people want in their lives is control, right? And so when you work with people who are, somebody who's like has something called like borderline personality disorder, their biggest fear is abandonment. And so they will try and control the situation in any means possible. That's either manipulation, that's like, emotional manipulation and control, like, because they're so afraid, right? Like of chaos. They're afraid that they're going to become out of control. But all of it, like, the biggest human need is control, right? Like, we all want control, and we all grasp for that in different ways, and like a ton of different ways. It comes out in personality, it comes out in everyday situations. Like,
or the fragmented need, or is it the distortion of what our need is. Maybe our needs are a little bit more, just as I'm thinking out loud here, maybe our needs are a little bit more generous than that, but somehow when, our, the survival thing kicks in, we don't realize that we have what we need. Like that, essentially, I think the fundamental truth is that we have what we need, right? And but we don't really know it, that we are okay, but we don't really know it, because we were either conditioned or, somehow grew to believe, conditioned wise or some other way, to believe that we're not okay, and that somehow we need to do something, from a coping or what's the other word I'm looking for, kind of way, in a coping way. Yeah,
that makes sense. Yeah. So I was, like,
sorry to cut you off.
No worries. I don't care. we're just talking out loud, right?
We're vibing right now, aren't we?
Yeah. We just need a couple cigars, right?
Oh man,
we were supposed to do that cigar night.
I have this. This goes back to college. Yeah, we were supposed to do a Zoom cigar night for
during the pandemic.
I was really excited to do it, but I don't know what happened. I think here's what happened, Jeremy.
Life.
I think I was in such a weird season, and talk about like I don't know, just figuring out your stuff, I guess. I was like thinking about what to text everybody, and I was just in such a hyper like weird place of, I don't know, just figuring out my stuff, and I didn't, like, because everything, the world caved in, right? Now there's no,
Right.
like,
Yeah.
no, my world caved in, just in every way. So I was really happy and glad to like connect with everybody and do the community thing, but at the same time, I'm like, I don't know how to text everybody like a basic text. Like that's how weird and in my head I felt. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like a basic text, like, "Hey, does everybody want like when's it like just the going through that? I don't know. For it that season I know was so strange for everybody, and it took its like course for everybody in different ways, and I
Well,
had a lot. Yeah,
did you feel like that was like a super vulnerable thing to do? Because I can imagine it could be,
yeah. Oh,
right?
totally. Yeah, in some ways, Yeah, in some ways.
Which is kind of funny because like you were just talking about how when you were in Edison Glass, like tying up the loose ends, kind of like scheduling, creating things was like your was something that you did really well.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
then
I don't know. Just maybe some insecurity or something, but I don't know. I don't want to analyze it too much, but yeah. I don't know. I'll do a cigar with anybody anytime. I
oh,
was going to say, though, back to college, I have this image or memory burned in my head of who was the RA on our floor? Because we were
Joe.
all on the same floor, right? It
Yeah, Joe.
was Joe. But then there was a different dude, right? I remember there was a Chano. There was
So
Joe.
your first
It might have been Joe. Dude, I think it was Joe. Sorry.
yeah,
Okay. Right.
your first year
Well,
you were on Vatican, right?
I was on there every single semester.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, all four. I was there.
Our second year they put Joe on there because they wanted. My understanding was they wanted to try and tame us down.
I'm just remembering being on the what was that called? That top level. What was that top level? There was like one more. It was supposed to be a study lounge.
Right? Yeah, 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 yeah. I know exactly. Yeah,
House we call it.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
uh yeah, we would kill each other up there. We were like entering each other. Yeah, that was crazy.
I remember some really, really funny things, but I remember one time. I think it was after. I don't know if you were there. We were launching water balloons off the balcony. Somehow, I think Ruckle. You could get into Ruckle's balcony, and
Yeah.
we were launching water balloons off. And
Yes,
it was
Russell
either
and Sterling had
yeah,
this room, right, and their sliding glass door wasn't like everyone else's sliding glass door in that it
right.
opened all the way and not only limited to like 2 or 3 inches of opening. So we would sneak out onto the actual balcony and take that had this slingshot thing
Yeah.
launcher, and right across from our dorm tower were the ladies' dorm
Yeah.
tower because we were segregated at that point.
You were
Split.
just nailing
So,
him.
and
Nailing it.
so yeah,
Just
there was 1 or 2 girls' rooms, right? We would just get it bad and like at random, like every like few days or whatever, we would just like
I remember, I don't know if you remember this, but it was either after that or the air horn incident.
Yeah.
Where they sent, I think it was like the dean of students or something, sat us all down and was like, if you guys keep this up, like we're gonna spread. I remember him saying this very specifically. We will spread you all so far across campus that you'll never see each other again. They wanted to break up our entire door.
Yeah, we better tame it down then, I guess, is what we did at that point.
Yeah.
Yeah, because the floor.
I can't hear you, man. I can't hear you. I think is your thumb on? There we go.
How's this?
Hands up. There we go.
Yeah, this is what we all looked like when that security
Yeah.
flashlight in the pitch black. We were all like, "Oh shit!"
There was
Anyway,
that. Do you remember sneaking into towers after we went to go see, I think it was Fur Seems Forever and Elliot? Do you remember we had to sneak in through the windows, and so a guard almost got your foot. A guard like grabbed your foot. You don't
no,
remember this, do you?
I don't remember that.
Because do you remember you couldn't technically get back in onto campus until like 6 a.m. if you were out past
Oh,
curfew.
shoot. Yeah, I kind of remember this now.
So we went to go see, and I was talking with Ranzino about this too. We went to go see First Seems Forever, Elliot, and I forget what the other band was. The Rise, I think it was.
Yeah, it could have been Copeland, and I remember there was just a bunch around that time, and the working title,
Yeah. We went to, and I remember we were like, we're not staying out till
Oklahoma
6.
City, maybe. Was
Yeah,
it Oklahoma City?
I think so. And we went through the computer lab. It was like you, me, Merkel, and like Polite and Ranzino, I think. And like I remember we were like, we got to get through that door and just like run up the stairs as fast as possible. And just as you were the last one, and just as you were slipping in, like a security guard came around and like grabbed your pant leg or something, and we slipped and we just booked it upstairs as fast as possible. So I remember that.
Oh, because the computer lab was like all the way at the bottom level.
Right. Right. And specifically, I remember about that concert too, as I just remember you yelling, "I love you, Elliot!" like just in the middle of the gap. Like, I freaking love you.
Oh, that's so good. Wow. I, I'm glad you remember that.
I have a really good memory. Hold on one second.
You do? Dude.
I have a neighbor whose daughter is bipolar, and she will freak out sometimes, like out of nowhere. So she was just screaming for no reason. But anyway, yeah.
Good luck with all that. That's
yeah.
Sorry.
No. Trust me, it's very, very weird. Are you okay if I ask a little bit more focused questions?
Please do.
On some things. So I just want to know, like, did you start out with drums? I can't remember. Did you do piano?
I started playing piano around the age, I don't know, probably 5 or 6. And we all took lessons, us brothers in the Morin clan. And he was trying to teach me how to read music, and that was very frustrating for me because I think I had a teacher before that who was like teaching us by ear through the Suzuki method. So I learned piano and like voice from singing in church and stuff like that. So I always, and just parents who were very into music, right? So, and I have this picture too of us boys with like pots and pans and a guitar and just, like whatever, just, family jamming, having a good time, whatever, with music, so that was just sort of built into the culture at our house. And so I continued with piano, and I remember around age 10, and somewhere in there I remember becoming just enamored with the drums at church, watching either my dad play or watching some of the guys in the band play, just going, wow, that's an amazing sound, and that looks so fun,
Yeah.
And so my dad and some of those church folks and my brother Clark were all in this band, this Christian rock band called Repentance. So Repentance started to rehearse at my parents' place, and that meant that my dad needed a drum set. So he bought this Black Pearl Export drum set, some cymbals, and that was in the basement. So I was right down there. every day, just playing. So there was the drum set, and there was a ping pong table. And I remember the ping pong table, if you didn't have, a partner or one of my brothers, something to play with, you'd fold the ping pong table in half and play against yourself,
Right. Yeah.
So I would just go back and forth between those things. And inevitably, we moved our family, and so we moved a couple towns over, and that's where I met Josh Silverberg, and that was around age 12. And he would come over with his Spider,
Spider amp
painted guitar, whatever guitar that was, and his long hair and just, Silverbergness.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so we would just, jam or whatever. Yeah.
Would Josh play with you guys then, or
what was that?
would Josh play with you guys then too, or
my brother? Yeah, and my brother Paul too. I think Joshy, like a little later, like he was pretty still young, and so he knew some stuff, but he wasn't like, you know what I mean? He wasn't tied in yet, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
So, but Josh and Silverberg and I just became like good buddies, and I would just go over to his basement, and he had a kit down there too. And because his band was playing, and so I really looked up to them, and so I would always go over there and we would play. And so we were just all of us over each other's houses. And somewhere in there, we met James, because Silverberg was going to this church, and so James was there at the church, and then there's, the youth group stuff,
right?
And all this, like, it was just a big, mess of us kids all like learning and loving music together. And so, yeah, I guess those were like the early forming of the days of the band and stuff like that.
Well, that was it. Were you guys Manifest then? You must have been Manifest then.
Yeah, that name came when I was in 9th grade, and Silverberg was in, like, I don't know, senior high or something like that, or about to go to college. Yeah, such an embarrassing name. But we were literally like burning CDs, at like,
that's how,
one of our neighbors' houses, burning CDs and making photocopies at the local, whatever,
Kinko's or what? Yeah,
What was the Office Max? That was the one.
Yeah.
Anyway, and like printing the labels on the CDs, and like really being careful to put the labels of the CDs on the CDs, and just that whole thing, like just every little quirky, it's very. I remember those things pretty specific. Good memories of that.
It's very DIY,
Yeah. Huh?
It's like those when you're that young, right? And you're like, no, you're not as seasoned or whatever. Like, it's so exciting to do those things, right? Like I got this demo. Like, let me pass it out, and you're so pumped and jazzed about it, and
yeah, it was literally like a video game. Now that I think, you learn what music is, and you learn what you love about it, and then you learn stuff about an instrument, learn the instrument, make friends, make bands, get CDs. You know what I mean? And like, just write songs and play shows and play more shows and then play bigger shows. Win the battle of the bands.
Right.
Meet the label executives. Make a record. Go on tour. It's just like level up. Just pretty funny how.
Yeah.
And I have students. I teach drums still to this day. I guess I started teaching drums. Who's my first student was Ryan Usher, James's younger brother.
Oh, really?
Yeah, and I remember like teaching him. It was back in I think 06 or something like that. He just wanted to learn, some what I could teach him. He had like just a work, just like how I grew up loving and not having a lot of formal training on the instrument. But anyway, so I was just teaching. I remember one of the first lessons I taught him was listen to the guitars on Cirque or Survive was one of the things I said. I was like, I don't know how to teach you the drums, but listen to the guitars on this record.
Right.
I knew how to teach him music. I knew how to teach him like what to listen for. And I remember teaching him about putting emotion into the music and putting your personality into it and that type of thing. So, which is, still like what I teach in some ways. But, I teach till this day. And I Ryan Usher is one, he went on and he lives here now and he has, somewhat of a career still, I think, in music and has, been doing the thing. But I contrast that to today where I teach kids and I literally have to like put on the most inspirational, motivational speaker hat just to get them to consider to go play and jam with their friends, And it's like, come on, like, what are we doing? I get how fun, screens can be and all that stuff, but I'm like, you need to go make friends. And I literally told this to one of my students, like, you may meet the love of your life.
Yeah.
Like, what can I do?
Dude.
Give kids the same opportunity, that I.
It's weird because the world is different, and their social skills are shot. Like I'm not joking, man. Like they're shot. Like the amount of man. I was just kind of explaining this to somebody the other day, and I think a lot of it has to do with something like I like to call trauma parenting. Is we learn from like our parents' mistakes, right? Or we look back with a retrospective of like, if you're lucky enough to go to therapy and you think about all these things, you're like, well, that impacted me in this way. And I don't ever want to do that to my kids. But you're doing it with like this kind of retrospective of an adult, right? And like, I have to think constantly with my kids, like, they're incredibly resilient. Like, they're going to have to experience hard emotions. They're going to have to experience like, uncomfortableness. And I think a lot of parents really shelter their kids emotionally from not feeling hard feelings, right? And that in and of itself, like it's a good desire in some ways, but at the same time, it's like kids have to know that they can experience hard things and like move past and through and learn, right? I think there was like a mistake in previous generations that was like, instead of helping through the emotion, there was like, you just got to deal with it. Like, but there's a way to teach. When I sit down with my son who's having like just gets really frustrated really easily, like I have to sit down with him and I'm like, yeah, dude, it's not okay to do some of the things that you're doing. And I know you're frustrated. So like, how do we move through that emotion, right? How do we experience it, harness it, and then like think about a couple ways we could do something to calm that emotion down a little bit, like harnessing, that old adage of, control your emotions, don't let your emotions control you type of thing. Everything is valid. Like what you feel is valid, but it's not paralyzing. And I see that a lot with teenagers, and you're just kind of like, what are your social skills are like, I will have other teenagers just like, I don't know how to talk to people. I'm like, what do you mean? Like, you're going to do some cringy stuff, but like, you got to have friends. You got to have social interactions.
Well, I mean, it was hard then, and it's probably harder now, but it's all the same sort of challenges that we all face, which is like the belonging question and Yeah. What do I want to do? You know, it's tough. I mean, I had that pretty built in, as per, you know, as per that story I just told you, and just what has unfolded in my life and thus far, which has been really very largely music
Yeah.
based, career based.
Joe, something I'm actually really impressed with is how much you've stuck with music. And I'm really kind of interested in that because there's a lot of people that I talked to on the podcast who, like, after the band was done, like one of the guys from Hope's Fall I was talking to, Josh, he was like, I quit and I put my music equipment away for like 4 years and I didn't play anything. Like, I just didn't play. And I taught
What is the instrument that he?
guitar.
Okay.
And it wasn't until, like, I think he said, so that band broke up in like 2006, 2007. And he's like, I didn't really pick that back up until like 2011. Like,
Wow.
I just wanted nothing to do with it, and so your consistent, like, pursuit. I would say, like, all you guys, all the guys from Edison Glass, like,
Yeah.
your continued
Yeah,
movement
bro.
towards music.
We were obsessed.
Yeah.
We wanted to make something new. I mean, I don't know how successful we were at that. I mean, we probably had some moments, but
I still look. I don't know. A couple months ago, put on Time is Fiction, and like, I still think that record is incredible. I really do. Like,
thank you.
It's an amazing record. It just never got the kind of push and the tours that I think you guys should have gotten.
I have such a weird perspective on that whole part of it, and we could talk forever about it. But I mean, I it's like a million. I have a million thoughts about like everything we're talking about. We were very proud of that record, and it was a joy to make. Co-produced that one with Nathan Dantzler, who's a incredible producer and mixing engineer and mastering engineer in his own right, and it's done a lot of stuff. Worked with lots of the bands that we know and love. But yeah, Time is Fiction was cool. It was really special memories. I for a while there, I was going, and by for a while, quote unquote, I mean, there was a time where I would frequently, or not, I don't know, like every year or so, I'd put on one of those records that we made. And I would just experience so many feelings in those moments. I don't know, probably just things that were compressed or suppressed or something. But yeah, really proud of that. I mean, what's really incredible, just make this last point, I guess. I think at the end of the day, like, we're talking about how to remember things from your past well. At the end of the day, what if any of us who have done this whole thing and been where we've all been in the creative process, being in a band, touring, the whole nine, at the end of the day, if anything that we have, it's the recording of the moments that we're in. It's recording a record is saying, this is exactly where I was at this exact moment, and this is what I was doing, and this is what we did, and this is how it is for us. This was exactly how it was.
Yeah.
This is the sound where I was making. And I think of that only because
your mic cut out again. Sorry.
You're good. I only reflect on it in that way because I've had the vantage point of, am I good here? Does it sound better?
Yeah.
Okay. So I have this vantage point now of being able to go, oh, these are the sounds I'm making now, you know, but that was the sound I was making then, you know, and that's a really,
Can't hear you again. I don't know what's going on.
maybe I'll take this party inside. Hang on.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know what happens. There's been a couple of times where it's just gone kind of like vaguely silent.
Eerily silent. I'm gonna go upstairs.
Where's your studio at now? Do you have a studio going on?
Yeah, I have a little makeshift area here in this room. So
Nice.
yeah, easy peasy. So I guess just to circle back and finish that point, it's, you know, the vantage point I have now is I'm making all the sounds I'm making today. And when I listen back to any of the records, you know, that Edison Glass made, or any of the recordings that I have, that I was, you know, glad to and fortunate enough to contribute to back then, you know, I can listen and say, oh, those are the sounds I was making then. Cool.
Right.
You know, so I think we all ought to be, you know, I'm just thinking about all the guys who like have regrets, you know, spending the time that they did doing that. At the very least, you have recorded proof, you know, that you were glad to, glad to make that kind of music then, and that's something to be said for that.
Yeah. And I mean, do you still meet people today that know you from Edison Glass and who are just like, yeah, that was really awesome music? And, you know,
yeah, every once in a while, like I'll be playing drums at church, for example, and I'll meet somebody and I'll be like, oh yeah, my old band used to tour to that area, and oh, who did you play with? And I'll be like, no kidding, you know. So that's pretty flattering and surprising, but yeah, the following we had was pretty special, you know. I mean, the ones who knew us really loved us, you know. There are some people who are like, yeah, that was cool, but fans in general, fans of music back then, I mean, there was nothing like it. I mean, just the generation we grew up in, and the generation that, you know, we were making music with, you know, because it was all our music, you know, all of us were all making music with and for each other, everyone playing shows, you know, and everybody doing the whole thing, touring, playing together and opening, you know, my band's opening, blah, 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 you know, to be opening for a Blind Side, to be opening for a May, to be, you know, opening for whoever, you know, to go out on tour with a Bernard or whatever, like that was just, you know, I mean, that's what we did. That's what we were all doing, you know?
Yeah.
And it seems like such an obvious thing to say, but you just compare that with now. I mean, there's just such passion, you know? Everyone was so passionate.
What do you think? Do you feel like that? Because I talk a lot about this with like, as far as like the quote unquote scene or just the music scene in general, we've talked about like how it's great there's so many options now to get your music out that there's almost like a glut of music, and, you know, not so much is promoted anymore, right? Like, it's like you can go anywhere, Bandcamp, Spot, like, and there's a million DIY different bands and, you know, stuff like that. But I don't know. It feels like the live aspect I'm sure it's different in Nashville. It's just kind of toned down a little. Like you don't see that much. You don't see as much of a DIY like as you did. I feel like back then, but I could just totally. I was talking with Jeremy about it, and it's just different. Like things have changed, and you know what do you notice?
I think music is always being made in every corner of the planet.
Yeah,
It's just that most of life in general, I think we all know this, is done this way.
right.
Done via some sort of digital interface. But so that would skew the perception, I think, of new music being made and new music being shared, experientially or whatever. So,
What's the scene like in Nashville though? Because like I mean, Nashville's a music hub, right? But I was just in New Orleans like 2 days ago, and anywhere you went, there was music. There was a live band. Like didn't matter if it was a weekday or a weekend. Like you would just walk down the street and there'd be people playing, or you could just walk into a club and there'd be like, yeah, jazz band or something going on. Like it was pretty incredible. Like in general, and there was a part of me that's like, man, how are any of these people getting seen? But at the same time, I think it's just for the love of music, right? Versus like actually getting seen and getting a recording deal or like
yeah,
whatever. It's like Nashville.
yeah, there you go. I think you just nailed it on the head. I mean, the one thing versus the other being, uh, can my band, like my video game story example before, can my band rise the levels in the game, of becoming more known and in popularity and in all that stuff, so that we can have as many people and do the natural and good ambition of sharing your art with as many people as you possibly can. Does that the band subject is further down the list of of what's in right now. So um, yeah, so I think that that's a reasonable thing to think. But then, yeah, is the music the pure enjoyment of it and people going out there and just making it to make it, making art for the art's sake, and just enjoying it? I mean, yeah, that's happening. That's what was my point before. People are always making something, and no, of course it doesn't look like it did, but yeah, I like here's another example. So I am doing still some freelance playing with just whoever, and I've been doing a lot of that in the last like 6 years or 7 years since moving out here to town. And an artist who I just worked with the other night, and this is the God's honest truth. Like it's this little indie venue. It's called the Underdog. It's here in town, and it's with this artist. His name is Ben, and he's like a Nick Cave kind of, singer songwriter dude. And there's like maybe 24 people in the room. Just like normal, just like
Yeah.
whatever. Mostly dudes, honestly. You know, and I was just like, yeah, okay, this is what's up tonight. And there's a couple openers, and they were good. They were also pretty folky, whatever. And they were about to do like a 4-day. They were calling it a tour, but it was like a run. It was like a 4-day run. And I'm like, all right, that's cool. But we play our set, and it was good. Like people are listening, people are enjoying listening, clapping at the end. And so yeah. But that's not like a good window or a good example of just it's still happening. It's just, you know, and then on a whole other on the other side of the coin is the fact that all our favorite bands are like doing reunion stuff
I
now.
know.
That's pretty cool. Like Sunny Day Real Estate is about to be here, and I'm
Oh
definitely
yeah.
going. Gordon and I are going to go to that. You know, so yeah, I think if you had like if you're a Sunny Day Real Estate, you can do that. You know,
Right.
there are some bands like that just got in like at the right time. You know,
Yeah.
and they rose up. You know, and just had the right stuff and had the longevity and whatever. Their songs resonated with a lot of people. And that sort of thing. And they broke, you know?
Yeah.
Well, enough, you know?
That was one thing, and I'm hesitant to say this because I say this every single time on the podcast, but when we were at Furnace Fest, like every band, because Jeremy Enoch played just solo, and like every band like flocked, all the bands that were playing, like most of them flocked over to go see Enoch play. Like, because that was, or like Casket Lottery or, Mineral or those bands, right? Like,
That's my point. Yeah.
yeah,
That's my point. You were either making music or you were there because you were obsessed with music. And
right.
if you were in either case, there were going to be and are artists who are just like, they just resonate. And Jeremy Inning is one of those people. I think he's a special human being and therefore maybe I'm low-key obsessed with him because his music has been there for me at so many different times in my life, you know?
Yeah. Well, I was talking to Jason Gleason and he was like, I bumped into Jeremy like right before his set and I just fanboyed out. And he's like, it was so embarrassing to me. It was like,
I remember fanboying out with I was, my sister-in-law and I went to see Jeremy Innig. My brother was Josh's wife, Gina. So he for some reason wasn't able to make that show. But so she and I went to see Jeremy Innig in the city. This is in like 2007 or 8. And I was like just very fanned out. And I remember seeing him and I was just, the only thing that I could think to say, and I think I was just like out of my mind. And I said like, I was like, I saw that you were playing on MySpace and I had to come. Yeah.
It was like,
no. And like Gina was like, Joe, like, you're such an idiot, you know? You just said the dumbest thing. It's like, yeah, I guess so.
But that's what happened. I mean, Jason was like mortified at his. He was like, I didn't know. He's like, to me, because he says he's like, I don't know. It's weird. Like Jeremy Nick was kind of like this weird father figure to me. I didn't, didn't have a dad growing up, and but he's like, and I like. I mean, I don't know. I don't know if he knew his dad. Like, I don't know the story behind that, but like, it was just, he was just kind of like, just didn't know what to say, and he was like, I was fumbling over my words and like made an ass of myself, and he was like, I have to go play now. It was like right before he was about to step on stage. But same thing too, man. I saw when I was living in Bellingham, like he played a really, really small club and it was just him, the guitar, a bottle of wine, and like it was just a very, to me, very spiritual experience.
Did he have a piano with him?
I think it was just his guitar. He might have had the piano.
But yeah, he had so last time I saw him was at this little record shop here close to town. And I went with my friend, I think two of my friends. And so anyway, it's a small little record shop, probably packed with about 40 or so people. And we were just all in there. And it's one of those experiences where you're like all in an elevator, you know what I mean?
Right.
And you're all just very much like, I don't know, just you could just sense that everybody in there is just glad to be there,
Right.
Yeah, he played a lot of his newer stuff at the time and some of the old goodies or whatever. And was cool. I remember just at the end, my friend who I was with, Kyle, he goes, I remember just saying to him, I might want to go say hi. And Kyle goes, I'm not saying that. Yeah. And then I just, yeah, that kind of dimmed my flame a little bit because I didn't end up going to say hi for the same feeling, but.
I said one thing to him, and actually it was on the plane to Furnace Fest. He was walking. I was like, I think that's Jeremy Enoch, but he was all masked up or whatever, and he like sat 2 seats behind me, like diagonally, and I was like, I love your music, and like that. And I was like, just straightforward, just sat there. It's like that's all I'm gonna say. Like that was all I could muster.
Well, he's really, I mean, he's Jeremy Enoch, but he's, I hate that I'm doing this, but enigmatic. Like he's kind of.
Oh yeah, for sure.
He just has
like I was at a show in Seattle, I think like 2007, or there was a band called the Pale, or they changed it into the Pale Pacific, but they were from Bellingham, but they were playing like their last show.
Records.
Yeah, he Jeremy just showed up in the back, was just like, my friend was like, oh, I think Jeremy Enoch's in the back. And he was just, standing in the back, just like chilling. But like, it's that, yeah, he is very mysterious in some ways, just kind of like seems like a shy, humble type guy. And, you know,
what's cool is Edison Glass, we made our first record with Brad Wood, who produced The Fire Theft and Sunny Day and, all that good stuff.
Remember that.
So, we heard lots of different stories from Brad about him and about Will Goldsmith, who was for a time in Foo Fighters, so it was it was kind of a cool education in that world and the mythology, And to be part of it was such a, it was pretty humbling, or I didn't know it was humbling at the time, but it's humbling to look back on that,
Time and perspective, right? Like, and your mindset or what you value or see now versus what you saw then. Like it's two different experiences, Yeah,
we often see the obstacle,
Yeah.
And, you think of like some of the classic, like the literature, like The Hobbit, and you think of, you can see the mountain in the distance, but even when you get to the mountain, it's your destination the whole time. Guess what's inside,
Yeah. And what are you doing now, Joe? So you teach a little bit. You're like, what style of music are you playing?
Mm-hmm. Well, like I said, I'm doing the freelance thing really on the side. And I was doing a lot more of that for a time, not too long ago. Pandemic kind of messed with a lot of that. But yeah, the freelance thing brings me in all kinds of different directions, the folk singer-songwriter direction recently, and in the pop direction. I was working with Paper Route for a while back in 2017, and kind of country soul rock type of thing with an artist named Shelley Fairchild, one that I work with sometimes out here. I'll get called for that. I just got called yesterday to like be part of a project that is heading towards like a high-end wedding corporate thing, and I'm like, oh, all right, maybe I'll consider that. I don't know. So you know what I mean? It's like a type of freelance sort of work that I may or may not take. And then a big part of what I'm doing right now is playing with a church, believe it or not, up in Owensboro, Kentucky, and that's both like a musical experience and like a life experience, if that makes sense, community and all that type of thing. So that's pretty cool. I mean, musically, dude, it's like, modern worship type thing.
Right.
So it's just what it is. And it's fun. to play. It's fun to go and play drums in a packed room, full of people who are, happy to be there. Like that is cool,
Yeah.
Say what you want to say about, the whole thing, or worship, Christian music, whatever. And I'm with you, probably on most of it. But perspective is a word you just used. So from my perspective, it's one of gratitude and one of, gladness to just continue playing.
It's really interesting you said that, Joe, just because I was thinking about, like, it's really difficult for me to go to shows now. Like, honestly, it's not because of my age. It's mostly because people don't stop talking during the entire set.
Yeah.
And I can't.
I remember you kind of venting about that.
On Instagram or something like that. Yeah. But it was, like, if I'm going to see a band, right? Like, I think I went to go see American football in Portland, and just everywhere around me, people were talking and like just having conversations. And like, I remember going upstairs to the bar. I was like, well, maybe that'll be just like a little bit different up there. Maybe people are just there, just kind of like chilling or whatever. And I went up there, and a guy was another guy who was kind of went by himself, was like coming down the stairs, and he was like, it's no better up there. And and like we both like looked at each other like, are you experiencing the same thing that I'm experiencing? Because like, I or like, I really like Mike Kinsella's solo project called Owen, and it's really
Who
intimate.
Did he play with? For some reason that's only ringing a little bit of a bell.
So it's just a solo thing.
Okay. Where does he come from? What's his?
Sorry. American football.
Got it.
Cap and jazz. Yeah, I dig his stuff a lot. Like, he very singer songwriter. Very. I should have to send you some of his stuff because it's really good. To me, he encapsulates a lot of the mundane side of life, and just like, he's a dad, and just kind of like, I don't know, just taking these like really mundane things and turning it into something like beautiful. And it encapsulates like your 30s and 40s.
I think that's the purpose of. I think that's one of the purposes of life right now.
Right.
Right now for me, and in general, is to turn. So you used the word perspective before, and then all that stuff when we were talking about the obstacles and often only seeing the obstacles. And here we go, philosophy again. But it's like, what about this experience can I, how can I take this experience that might pose as a negative one and make it into a positive,
I would say, if you turn it into a spiritual thing, it's where can I find God?
Yeah.
Right. Like, where can I find the goodness and the source of goodness? I took a class in grad school that was just called, like God and the Artistic Impulse. And it just kind of like went through some of even just the mundane things. Like, we read a book called like doing laundry, cleaning, and other types of women's work is basically what it was called, but it was from like a long time ago. But it was like, where do we find God in the mundane things of life? It's like, where do we find God in the monotony and those different types of things? So I find it just even kind of going back to talking about trying to control and chaos, and I find something deeply spiritual about the concept. I think even like in Genesis, of God taking this, because I did a little more theology background when I was doing my master's degree, and so we kind of went more into kind of the mythology in creation and the type of story it was telling, and just the whole concept of God taking this like chaotic event and making order, and like that's what God does, right? Like he creates in the middle of chaos,
Speaking it into existence.
Yeah, and ordering that which is destroyed and creating something beautiful from it.
Yeah. Using words.
Yeah. But I don't know. So it sounds like you're still pretty involved.
Building and growing and communing.
Yeah. Well, I've got two like very different tasks.
Naming's a big thing too.
Yeah.
Naming what it is. Why do we teach our kids what is yellow and red and a circle and a triangle and a square or a rectangle? Yeah. Naming. Why is this a 16th? Why is this an 1/8 inch adapter and not a 16th inch adapter?
Yeah. Yeah.
And being that naming someone, calling someone by their name is the highest act of love that you can give.
Yeah.
Why nicknames are terms of endearment,
Right.
So
do you still like, what brought you to Nashville though? Like, I remember you did this stuff with Heavy Duty Super Ego.
Yeah.
And then I just remember you were like in Nashville like that.
Oh yeah. There's a lot of my story that I suppose we haven't gotten caught up on, but I think maybe the cliff notes from where that left off was after that band and I basically parted ways. So, and that was a tough time, and we can talk about that some other time, I suppose. But it was a band that I made with James and Josh, my brother, and some other friends at some point, and we made some recordings and had some fun with it. And at some point in there, I realized, like, okay, what do I want?
Yeah.
And what do I need? And part of that, the answer to that question was to be like you now in a position of service. And so I took this job with a organization called Free, and I was teaching people with special needs and teaching them music. And I formed a bell choir, and we made a little CD too.
Oh, cool.
And, there's all compositions of stuff that I wrote. I don't know if you remember, like in Edison, I was always playing bells or some kind of
glockenspiel.
Yeah, all the percussions, and so that's what I was doing with these guys. And there was another side project there that I was helping out with at Free, the special needs place. It was a theater arts everything program. They also had a drum line. I helped out in the drum line. So during that time, it was like an incubation period, I would say, for me. And I was doing a lot of everything, musically. And I continued to hear this call back to this city in Nashville, really because probably out of this, as I look back on it now, man, I think it's just a part of the eternal call to make the best music I can possibly make, to be the very best musician I could possibly be, because somewhere in that incubation period and all throughout it, I was studying with different drum teachers and mentors. And bro, I've everything I could possibly learn on the drums, every single thing that I could possibly figure out how to do on the drums, I was busting my ass to do it, like all the time. I was practicing all of the time. I would work all day at Free, and then I would get off work. I would teach lessons for 2-3 hours on the road. I'd get home. In my left hand, I would be eating a sandwich. On my right hand, I'd be playing on the practice pad, watching Game of Thrones or whatever the heck was on TV at the time. And that was just me. That was my life. And the whole time I was dreaming, like, okay, I want to go back on the road. I want to go be a session drummer. I want to like play with the best musicians in the world, you know? So I was doing all of that. And finally I pulled the trigger in 2016 is when I moved out here. So yeah, that's the long and short of it, you know?
Did you get hooked up? I mean, because Silverberg was out there. Were you guys still in contact at all, or?
Yeah, so there were a few like little projects that I would come and fly out to do, and with him sometimes I would just come out here and stay with him, and we would, you know, make some recordings and stuff like that. So write some songs, things like that. So yeah, he was a big part of that. And then when I got out here, one of the first things I did was meet with him for dinner. I told this story, I think, last night even. Met with him at dinner at this place called Bar Taco. Went to dinner at Bar Taco. I remember commenting, this place feels like LA now. Like LA, which is kind of like people are moving here in droves in general, but especially from LA. And that's cool. My girlfriend's from LA. So, yeah. So that's cool. That's a gift. But, yeah.
So you guys, you hooked up on that. You went to dinner, and then would you just to make connection?
Yeah. You know, did I tell you about the project he and I started and discontinued last year? In the span of like, Silverberg is so busy with a billion things that it's hard to like, you know, keep him on a
one thing. Yeah.
But so he hires me for different sessions and stuff like that, and that's cool. But we had this project we started, and we're really trying to do some cool things with, called Music for Breathing, and we did some cool things. We produced together 3 tracks, and there's only an instrumental version of one of the songs we co-wrote, co-produced, and it's out there. It's called Beneath the Honeycomb. So yeah, so one of them is a solo piano thing that I wrote, and he kind of co-wrote a little bit, called Surrender. Another is by the way, all these titles are mine. What's the other one?
Are they meant to be like meditative practices, or just when I think of music for breathing, the thing that like automatically comes to mind is like, is this for like an app or something, or like?
No. These are songs. You know, one of them is a solo piano thing that's like, so the project. It's how it came together was his, you know, he's trying to basically create a lot of different tracks for the licensing and sync thing and the library thing, like some music sync library bed, all that.
Mm-hmm.
And that was the impetus really for the desire to collaborate. But what we got were, you know, some really cool tunes, you know. I'll send you them.
Yeah, I'd enjoy that.
Two of them are like, you know, they're just, you know, it's music. I can't. Yeah. You know, I mean, I started, all of them are ideas that I started, you know, and then he and I developed together.
Yeah.
That makes sense, you know.
Yeah.
So,
do you play every week? Do you play every week at the church, or?
I do.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's a big part of my life right now. You know, they're called Owensboro Christian Church, and I didn't know this place existed on the map 2 years ago. You know, which is when I to go hang out up there. Some friends of mine were playing up there.
My brother is heavily involved in worship music. He runs a website called worshipartistry.com, and they just do full scale lessons. And it's oddly enough, what's that?
I know about that. Yeah.
Yeah, that's so my brother's the main guitar teacher on there. And it's actually, he got invested with Doug Brown's dad. But it's pretty amazing. Like, my brother's really passionate about it. Like, he's spent 7 or 8 years just curating all this stuff and expanding the business. And yeah, I'm really, really proud of him. He's done an amazing job on it. But it's got everything. It's got, they started out with just guitar, and now it's everything, like vocal lessons, like all that stuff. My brother's really, really interested in the community aspect of it, you know.
Bro, I mean, I think that's what it's about at the end of the day. I mean, we all have our own experience, and we both went to ORU. Put a pin in the paragraph, but it's like you consider all the nonsense, all the BS, and all the things that have come out about the Catholic Church, and you can talk about what your what your views are in the debate of science versus religion, blah blah blah, and all that stuff, atheist versus Christian, all that, and it's like, well, okay, at the end of the day, what does the human engine need?
Yeah, it's community, relationship.
So,
and that's again coming back, like, that's what I love about doing this, is because not only do I get to connect with people, but you're probably the first person from like my past that I knew, like which is just awesome for me to be able to get to do. But it's about connection, right? And this kind of like shared experience, and just talking about music, and just talking about like this thing, and whether you believe it's God-given or not, or like whatever, but this thing that just binds us as people together and creates community, which is music, and for some people that's invested into whatever scene or church or whatever, but like, it's a shared common experience that there's a ton of meaning. And I mean, it's just from my personal perspective, is like, it's a very, to me, spiritual, God-given type thing. It's a gift.
I agree.
I
think we're starting to see, a cultural reawakening toward that.
I hope so, man. I really do. Because it's needed. I mean, when we were so Furnace Fest happened after or kind of sort of towards the tail end of the pandemic. And the feeling, the vibe was just so community oriented. And it was like less of like it was like a reawakening of like, oh, what does it mean to be a part of like these people who love these bands and are just all here to have a good time, and just like, but they were all people like, our age, and still this kind of like weird thing for me of like this kind of like shame I had of what I like to listen to, and is that still relevant? And like all these like weird hangups with it, and then going there and seeing all these people who were like tatted up and still had like band t-shirts, and I was like, oh, it's like, oh, it's okay for me to still kind of do that, type of thing. And it's a different experience though when you're older, man. Like Ramsey, we were going up to see Piebald, and we were going up these steps, and no joke, like Dave's knees gave out, and he was like oh my gosh, dude, I can't. He's like, I almost just fell down the stairs. Like we were sore just from standing the entire day.
Oh, bro, I mean, I'm feeling like I feel two things right now, and that's sad and glad. And sad is what because of what you just said, and because I have my own stories,
Yeah.
about this aging process, and then glad because I'm not alone, and none of us are alone, you know. So,
Yeah. There's
that's kind of what I was talking about before with change. Sorry to cut you off.
no. Yeah.
About change being part of life, change
Yeah.
being the constant, change being the way forward, and mercy or grace through acceptance.
Man, there's a just talking. I personally, I have to make some pretty drastic lifestyle changes, like in the near future, just because I'm having certain health things come up, and I'm like, I don't want to feel like this anymore, or I don't,
Yeah,
like I need to, yeah, and
we all grew up with a refresh button,
right, yeah,
but these bodies, who of us has found the fountain of youth,
yeah,
and I think the fountain of youth is being in is like this, is the heart being alive, and the
yeah,
mind being renewed, and the spirit being revived, in as we, are in as we experience being in a belonging, community, and doing the simple things, it's not that complicated at the end of the day,
right.
we choose to feed. Like, what wolf do you feed, right?
Yeah.
I have to remind myself of that, the simplicity of it. But not to cut you off, I mean, I'm my own health things, that
Yeah.
I mean, after a certain point, the body does start to break down a little bit, and so it's just, how do I roll with it? I remember being at church before I moved out to Nashville, and I started to get tinnitus in both of my ears, and I was really anxious about it because, I know it's probably something that a lot of the guys you have on here talk about. A lot of the guys that you meet now, and probably fucking all of the guys, like more than half the dudes, that we love band wise, they probably have this too, and
I have it. Yeah.
constant ringing, both ears, very loud. It's gotten worse over the years because of other incidents that have taken place. So whatever, talk about that later. But I remember
Yeah.
talking at church. I can't remember the guy's name. I remember kind of what he looked like, older fella. And I was just telling him, we were just having this honest conversation, didn't get too specific, and he started telling me about something that he was encountering. I can't remember what the heck it was, but it was just like this physical challenge. And, he was just like, well, what do I do? I guess I just roll with it, and that was like the theme. He just kept saying, I guess I just roll with it, just like make it part, so like you said, make it's now a part, this is part of the deal now, okay, it's part of the deal.
It's acceptance.
Yeah.
Right? Like I've run into some health things with one of my kids.
Yeah.
And it's he's got low frequency hearing loss in his one ear, which is pretty rare for kids. So kind of bass sounds he can't really hear. And he'll have like vertigo spells. And it might be something to the effect of like he might have this I don't know for a fact, but because kids are weird, their bodies do weird things, man. Where he might lose hearing in that ear.
Yeah.
And like to kind of come to, I don't know how to walk through that process as like my own body is aging, and like my kids are young, man. So, Just last night, my son, without warning, just like pounced on me while I was laying down and just like hit my stomach. And like I've been struggling with a lot of like acid reflux, and like just hit something and just bunch of acid went up and like aspirated in my lungs, and I just started like coughing, and I was like, I have to slow down. You know what I mean? And that there's this like kind of painful experience of like I don't have the energy that he requires, even just because I am older. My brother is 3.5 years older than me, maybe 4 years. Can't exactly remember, but his kids are 16 and 13. My kids are 4.5 and 1.5. And
Did you imagine? Yeah. Sorry,
yeah,
keep going.
no. It's like,
I know. Yeah.
and so like he's on another cusp of life where he's like, my kids are going to be out of the house soon. And I'm like, I'm going to be an older dad, and just like, I don't know, struggling with some internal feelings of just like, I want them to be, I want to be there energetically for the ways that they need me to be there too. Right. And, it's this weird, parenthood is this weird experience. Very weird experience.
Did you anticipate your life being anything like it was, like when we knew each other in college, and around the time that
That's a good question, Joe.
West Coast,
Yeah, a lot of things fell apart for me. Just, I mean, it sort of is. I don't know. There's things that I'm really grateful for, and there's like growing and painful processes that happen, right? And like I've always just been kind of happy with relationship that's just kind of like, but no, I didn't. I mean, I think I'm not joking you, dude. I might have thought that my life would be Dave Ranzino's life as it stands. Like,
what do you mean?
well, I originally, my bachelor's degree is in TV and film.
Right.
And so like that's what Dave does. He works there, right? And like he lives in the same hometown. I don't think I ever wanted to specifically end up back in New Jersey, but my entire family no longer lives there. So I always wanted to be up by my brother, but I always thought maybe I'd do television or film. I had no intention of being a therapist or any of this. That was just a process that I was like, I gotta freaking do something with my life. I'm working 3 jobs. Like I gotta figure something out. So I don't think I thought I'd be doing this, and I don't think I thought I'd be like a business owner.
You own a business?
Yeah, so like I'm literally starting a new job next week, but I had a therapy business myself. It was just, you just kind of run it as your own.
Yeah. All right, gotcha.
So I did that. Yeah, so I did that for 6 or 7 years. I definitely didn't think I would be living outside of Portland. That was not we actually kind of got stuck here due to like housing prices where my parents live. But so some yes and some no. I mean, what about you? Is this where you thought you'd be?
I'm at a crossroads. I'm about to turn 40.
Yeah.
My body is not what it used to be. So drumming for a living is not taken shape the way I had thought it would. And so I have some figuring out to do myself,
Yeah.
So I 2 or so years ago, and a little bit through the pandemic, I was working towards a bachelor's degree in psychology. So I earned an associate's in psychology. So that means if I want to complete the bachelor's, I can do that, but it's another couple years, right? And then there's, I'm getting real specific, but the whole aim and the hope there, Jeremy, is towards offering some kind of marriage and family therapy perhaps. Maybe not. I'm not really excited at the idea of marriage therapy, but like one-on-one therapy, like that. There's something about that is helping individuals that appeals to me, and as always has. As my own journey through mental health and my own journey as a person. So yeah, I am highly considering that right now, as things are just seem to be rapidly changing for me.
It's really funny because Eric is in the process of getting his master's degree right now.
Eric, your brother?
Eric Van Valen.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
He was doing stuff in Hollywood.
Right. Yeah.
And he just is about, I think, to finish his marriage and family degree through.
Oh, wow.
His master's through Fuller Seminary. And he had called me a couple years ago just to kind of talk about it a little bit.
Wow. Cool.
Joe, one thing I say, and I mean this for myself and for everybody, is, and I especially preach this to like my teenage clients, is very bluntly, like, nobody has it figured out.
I know.
We're all just trying to excuse my language, but we're all just trying to like fucking deal. And like the amount of pressure that I see people put on themselves, that like some of it's out of necessity and change, right? Yeah. But it's like, man, we're all just we're all doing our best. We're all just trying to figure it out. And I feel like the same thing with faith too. Like, I think the thing that saved my faith actually was Donald Miller. No, I'm just kidding. Who Like Jazz? You got to read this book.
I literally remember you saying the words, and I quote, "This book changed my life."
It definitely put me on a different path. But I ended up joining a faith community that my brother was a part of in Bellingham, and like the thing was just like, we're just trying to figure out what it's like to live like Jesus. Like that's, like that's the thing. And there was it's like, how do we do this? And how do we do this together? And like, I think that's just all we can ask. And you're not alone, man. Like, I literally yesterday or 2 days ago, I met with a friend of mine in Louisiana because they moved there. He's 41 or something like that. And he's like, I don't know what I got to do something. And I'm just not really sure what I'm going to do. Like whether that's going back to school or doing welding or something different.
Well, I'm at this crossroads that's pretty immediate because I have carpal tunnel in now both of my hands and wrists, so, and tendonitis and so.
I do too. I got a carpal tunnel release 2-3 years ago.
Yeah. And
I mean, it fixed the tingling issues, and I had trigger finger as well.
It fixed those?
Yeah.
Pain?
I don't. I mean, so I think so after the release was done, which was a 10-minute surgery, they just go in there because carpal tunnel is like your tendon is like inflamed or whatever, right? And they just go and just release the sheath in there so that it is no longer pressing on your nerves. And it was like I don't know, it was a month recovery. Just couldn't really like pick up really heavy things. But I have to get this hand done, but it stopped the tingling in it for sure. Like I would lose feeling and like get tingliness. And I don't know. Did you have trigger finger?
Yeah.
You know what that is?
It doesn't get stuck, but just some different things that are happening. Lots of what you might describe as inflammation.
Yeah. So, I mean, some things that I mean, we were lucky to have insurance to cover it, but like, I'm going to have to get it done again on this hand. And that literally just came from being a waiter years ago and carrying a bus tub like this full all the time.
Yeah.
And I just waited I waited so long to get stuff done. So that, like that's an option. I have another friend who, uh, this is a whole other thing, but what did he get? What is it when your joints are arthritis? He has arthritis, and he tends to use like a CBD 1-to-1 THC to help like reduce some of that inflammation. And he's a musician too. And so I think you have options, dude, like to help manage some of that.
Of course. Yeah. My playing experience this is why I talk about recording from the, vantage point that I do, is because recordings tell you, what you sounded like with what you were working with exactly that moment. So hitting a certain way, playing a certain way, all as a result of, what you had, at the time. And now I notice, and a lot of because of the development of my technique, which my hands are way better than they used to be, which has allowed me to express at, different dynamic levels and so on and so forth, and do different things and be maybe more accurate and all that, maybe more creative, but it's different, however.
Yeah.
It's hard to play and then experience the pain or discomfort or whatever that comes with it. That's tough. It's not easy, or teach or whatever, or pick up something and go, ooh,
Yeah.
It's not fun, it's not what you want, but again,
my brother, he used to teach a lot too. And then he started getting some really bad back issues where his back would seize up and would just kind of like mess with him. Here's a quick question.
Yeah.
Do you struggle with any sort of like back issues?
I have to watch my posture when I play and in general,
Yeah. So Josh Brigham from Hopesfall, the guitarist, he has a business called Adaptive in Charlotte. And he does but basically when he was on tour, somehow his back, something about it, one of his vertebrae was just like so compressed that they thought he was going to need to get back surgery. And he found this kind of
muscles, right? Yeah.
Yeah. And he ended up finding this, and my brother did some of it too, and it really helped his back, but doing a special type of he helps other musicians who have issues, just how to be functionally loose, and I don't know, just kind of work with their bodies, and stuff. So I could totally hook you up with that if you want his information.
I texted my chiropractor yesterday to see if he was available. He said, I'm not going to be around back from wherever he's going till the end of the month. And that's fun. But so I'm thinking I might actually call up, it's fun to have your, oh yeah, I guess it's just part of the change, right? It's like, we used to be so elastic, you look at
right
things now, and anyway, so it's just funny. But I think there's someone here. I appreciate it. I would love to speak with whoever, but I think I might actually call up somebody here.
Okay. Well, I'm going to send you over his information anyway. You can just look at his website, because I know this stuff really helped my brother too. My brother had shoulder issues and all sorts of different stuff that comes with aging, right?
Here's a question I have. So we're talking about emotional, spiritual, physical health, but here's maybe more of from, I guess this is more mental in a certain way, mental or maybe even social, mental / social, which is you find yourself just being more decisive and more what's the word? Just maybe frank, even, with what's up for you,
Oh yeah. I mean, I've
calling it is what it is, and not really giving, not being so careful or tiptoey, and of course, there's the, there's when it's needed, you need to be gracious with your speech and all that, but when it comes to just I don't know, just everyday things, or you find yourself, you know what I mean?
Well, here's what I do know. I do know that where we come from and where we grew up is a very different situation than all of the West Coast where I live. I have a client who's from New York, and like we hit it off immediately just because there was some, a lot of people my brother can be very blunt with people, and like it's gotten him into trouble at times. And like I straight up said to him, like, dude, like sometimes you come off like an asshole, like, but it's this whole like, you don't have time for the BS anymore, right? Like,
exactly.
Like, I talk to when I'm talking to my teenage clients and stuff like that, I'm like, literally, I said this to them. I was like, this is a product of being older, I think, but like, I do not give a shit what anybody thinks anymore, right? Like, I'm just like, I don't care as much.
Yeah, if time is like the greatest asset and necessity is the mother of invention,
right?
And necessity must also be the mother of like, what, I don't know, help me here, like some kind of just directness or being decisive, just, I don't have time to like be thinking about the billions of variables because it's just this is the relevant thing as I see it, so
yeah, I think for me too, it's been more of being more comfortable in my own skin and not also just worrying what people like. I have my people, I have my family, I have those I know who are going to support around me. And so like I care less what somebody else is going to think, because I'm just like, that doesn't define who I am anymore, right? Like I've grown into myself.
Really cool. That is one of the cooler part of ages. I mean, it's a bunch of pain in the ass things, but one of the cooler things is the knowing, who you are a bit better. Yeah. And I'm still learning, that's the great joy, it's like you're still learning, still creating or co-creating, like you said, like with God, with everyone else, and into something more like, like Christ, hopefully. C.S. Lewis says that in every moment and every decision, it's less the big ones that God is, or where we need to be concerned about, and more the little ones. At every point and every decision, we're either becoming a more hellish or more heavenly creature. Anyway,
I actually got to get going, my man.
Me too.
So
like a racehorse.
Yeah, me too. Yes, that's another thing. I'm aging. Joe. I'm sorry. This all kind of like fell apart a little bit at the end. I did not expect half of this. So, but
technical stuff from before.
Yeah.
Oh, no worries.
Yeah, but like, I obviously, regardless, I would have wanted to do this and just hang out and chat with you, even if it wasn't for like a podcast. But one thing I do want to say, man, is you can always give me a call. You can always chat with me about anything, anytime, like, that whole, you guys have always been, and I mean, like, you, James, like all that time in my life was very special for me. And I've always have like a good thing in my heart for it. And, I love you, and I hope. You'll figure. Yeah, if you need anything, you just let me know.
Thank you.
Just to talk or whatever.
You're doing a really cool thing here. As I say this as both your friend and as a podcast guest. Is just what you're doing here, and just connecting around the meaningful, what was meaningful, and how to look at it, in looking at the past and looking at your past present relationships and kind of keeping them alive in a special way is something to be said for that. So I appreciate it.
Well, that about does it for this episode. If you like the podcast, please consider subscribing. You can find us on all major podcasting platforms and on Instagram at The Scenecast. Again, thanks for listening, and we'll see you next time.